I had to redo it, but
Yeah.
okay. And I think we're officially recording onto it.
My thing says the meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Well, good. That's what it's telling me too. But the time that it actually gets to Facebook and us talking about it, gets delayed some. So right now I'm talking about it, the fact that that's going on.
Like a dying star.
Hey. So, this is typically a Wild Theology podcast. I'm here with Benjamin and Megan, who are down in Australia. And
hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get on you, mate.
How is Benjamin's Australian accent when he?
Oh dear God.
He can't get the vowels. When he tries the Australian vowels, he makes me laugh uproariously.
So when you give it a shot, everybody laughs at you, huh, Benjamin?
Well, I know because I don't do it in front of anybody I don't trust, which is to say anybody other than Megan. So.
And this is Kyle Henderson, and you're in the Dallas area, is that right?
I'm about 100 miles out of Dallas in a little town called Athens, Texas, in East Texas.
Okay. And I'm looking to see that we're popping up. Oh yeah, we're definitely there. I can see us now on Facebook Live. And so we're going to be talking about apologies for Christmas, and specifically in the context of Christian ministries needing to apologize for things that have occurred, right?
Yeah.
And Benjamin and Kyle have kind of been at the heart of one of those big issues. So why don't you guys just kind of take it away, some of the stuff you've done and what you're hoping for?
Yeah. Should we start by telling how Benjamin and I met?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm curious.
So I'll start, and then we'll let Benjamin kind of fill it in. So it's been 2 years ago now, or is it 3?
It would have been in 2018 sometime. Yeah.
2018. So in 2018, I got a message on my Facebook asking me to stop hosting the Global Leadership Summit, which we hosted at our church from Benjamin. And it was in response to the Bill Hybels scandal at Willow Creek, in which at that point it was alleged that he had sexually abused, sexually assaulted several women that were part of that network. And so I wrote Benjamin back a kind of a long treatise on why we were going to host it, and invited him to come to the summit with us. And not long after that, he wrote me back and said, well, you're in Texas, but I live in Australia. And I said, okay, so what's the problem? Planes fly. And so if I get you a ticket, would you come? And so then Benjamin went quiet for a day or so, and he consulted with a couple of his friends. A couple of his friends called him kind of called him on it and said, look, if you did all that and he's going to do that, you got to show up. So he agreed. So we bought him an airline ticket and flew him to Dallas. I picked him up at the airport in Dallas, and we've begun a really outrageously fun friendship kind of based in those moments. So that's kind of how we met, and but it was really about abuse and apology. That's kind of how we met.
Okay, so
I'll let Benjamin tell his version of the story.
Abuse and apology, as specifically as it relates to the context of Bill Hybels' church, the abuses of women that had occurred, and as it were, the cover-up of that through a variety of means.
Oh yeah, every way that's known.
Of course, yeah.
Blaming, shaming, hiding, secrecy, all the stuff. Yeah.
Right.
I didn't realize that a book had kind of been written about that, but essentially it's just following the playbook of how do you deflect and not take responsibility. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's I'll tell you what happened for me, Phil, was you know, I mean, if we go way back, I grew up in a super conservative church, part of a thing called the IFB movement, Independent Fundamentalist Baptist.
Okay.
Yeah, you probably heard of it. So that's where I came from. And we heard of, even in that like sort of very out there sort of sectarian space, we heard of Bill Hybels and Willow Creek Community Church. And I reckon they were the most famous, certainly the most famous church in the U.S. In the 90s, I reckon for sure, and in the 2000s. Right. And maybe in the world, one of the most famous. I mean, the U.S. has an outsized influence around the world, as you know. So. Right. It came to my attention in March of 2018 that the church had these things that they called family meetings. They had 2 of them. Right. They had one, and then they asked everybody not to record, and then a lady named Brandy, who's an absolute superhero, recorded anyway and published it. And then had thousands of people show up, and then they didn't like the fact that she had recorded and didn't like the production value, so they redid it. They actually, it's astonishing to me, they redid the exact same family meeting only for the purpose so they could record it and do it properly and not be seen to be laughing about it on stage in her recording. So they put Bill Hybels on stage. So this is after 4 years of them covering it up. It came out on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. Right. And so then they had these meetings, and they put Bill Hybels, the perpetrator, on stage and surrounded him with all his pastors. And they basically said, all these women are liars. They're conspiring. Yeah, they totally did this. All these women are liars. They broadcast it live on the second meeting to, you know, probably thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people, I reckon, have watched that. All these women are liars, and here's all the evidence to prove that they're all liars, and they're conspiring against Bill Hybels because they have some kind of personal vendetta against him because they feel like they were harmed in their work or in their kind of job or what have you. It's deeply astonishing, you know. It actually made me angry in a way that I'd never been really angry in my life before. So I was like in my mid 40s at that point. So. Right. Yeah. So after that, I was like, this is completely ridiculous. And obviously I'm not Gandalf, but I just thought that can't, it reminded me of that scene with Gandalf on the bridge and the Balrog is coming and he's like, you shall not pass. Right. Like, I was like, that's not going to stand. I'm not going to stand for that. Something's got to be done. It's completely ridiculous, right? Like little old me, like who am I? Like nobody even know her. I have no money and no power, basically. I mean, well, whatever. I mean, not compared to this organization. I mean, right. So I was like, well, something's got to be done. So I started writing to the pastor and staff of every single church that is part of this massive network. They have 13,000 churches in their global network, but in the U.S., right? Like it's insane. So I started. I mean, in the U.S., they had at that point like 700 churches. Okay. So I started writing to them all, and mostly they were like, "I'm going to get in trouble with some people," but mostly the pastors were either totally ignored me, overwhelmingly totally ignored me, or mostly the ones who wrote back to me were like, "Fuck off," you know. So.
They used the Christian version of that.
Right, Right. No, they were.
Which is meaner. It's meaner than just saying "fuck off."
It's way worse than "fuck off."
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's so much more demeaning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for you.
So anyway, so I was writing to these people and just getting used to being told "fuck off," and then like I wrote to this guy I'd never heard of before on Facebook, and he was like, he took me seriously. It was really weird, you know. So. And he it's very rare actually for anybody to take me seriously. So so he wrote back to me and he's like Kyle said, he's like, hey, you know, here's the reason, and why don't you come join us? So so off I went to Texas and attended the Global Leadership Summit in 2018, this organization that I've been smashing my head against for the whole year. So
right.
Yeah.
And so when you attended it, how did that go? Did everybody know you now when you arrived?
I don't know. I think Kyle might have told people about me. Yeah.
A few of my staff knew who Benjamin was, because I was like, well, you know, Benjamin's coming, and they were following it. Early on, that we didn't know much more than, well, somebody had, well, I mean, because we had a meeting like somebody, he had posted something on our Facebook. And so we had the meeting, like, what are we going to do? So there's those three strategies, right? Ignore it, delete it, or talk to the person. So lots of organizations do one of those first two things. Right. My organization and my nature is not to do either of those things. I think cover up is a bad idea always. I think this leading stuff is a bad idea. Right. And I think ignoring people is, it doesn't make any sense either. Not what I believe about the gospel and about who Jesus is. It's like, no, he loves people, and he takes them seriously. So we just decided, well, let's take it seriously. So I crafted a response that was a serious response, which is why am I hosting this event? What does it mean to us? What has it meant to us? Is it bigger than Bill? And how does this impact leadership development in Ethiopia, which is what my kind of passion project is in life. And so I've been involved in Ethiopia for years and years, trying to help people in Ethiopia. We have medical stuff there. We have water well drilling. We have leadership development. And that's the part of it that I serve. And this is the platform for me. So kind of that's what I was explaining to Benjamin. It's like we're hosting it for a myriad of reasons. And at that point, by then they were like, yeah, we're going to do an investigation. Bill had already retired. We're going to get this right. And I told Benjamin, I said, they're going to do an investigation. They're going to get this right. And Benjamin has told me many times that I'm very naive. He's more jaded, a little more cynical than I am. And I really did believe it, that we were going to get it right. Yeah. And I think maybe one day they will. I'm gonna keep working to see if they will.
Right. Okay. So once retirement,
they never will, Phil. They never will.
Right. So once retirement occurred, though, for Bill Hybels, then it just kind of gets swept under the rug, right?
No, because he retired.
Well, I mean, from their perspective, that's what they're trying to do.
Him. Bill, we've not heard from Bill since then. As far as I know, there's been no public statements for Bill. And Bill and I are friends. I love Bill. Like if he called me, and needed help, I'd go right now. I'd help him. And I would talk to him and say, Bill, you need to get this right. You need to fix this problem, right? And I reached out to him personally because I'd have a personal relationship with him, and I asked him to apologize, and I reached out to him and said, whatever, but have not gotten any response. Since May of 2018. Right. Very, very few people have heard from him since then.
Okay. So I'm just typing a few things into the Facebook Live thing, so people who are popping in will know what we're talking about. So you've replied, you've directly contacted Bill Hybels and said, hey, here, these things have occurred and there needs to be something that's done about it, but he's ignored that, right?
He's ignored it, and the organization said they're going to do an independent investigation. In fact, when Benjamin was here in 2018, they had said they were going to announce that at that summit, and they gave a verbal apology-like statement. Right. Yeah, I think that's right. It was an apology-like. It had a lot of the outer trappings of an apology, without the core underlying intentionality and compassion that probably characterizes a good apology. And then they hadn't yet done the independent investigation, which then it took them until September. I think that kind of apology happened in August. Then in September, they formed this group. And I told Benjamin, okay, now we've got an independent group. They're going to get this right. They're going to investigate this. And the women and their advocates who had brought the initial concerns to the Global Leadership Network, they all met with them. At this point, I'm still in the sidelines. Now I happen to know a number of the women because I've been involved in the Global Leadership Network for many years. I've attended
the women who were directly affected by this situation.
Yep. So I know several of them. I'm known to several of them because I've been interacting with the organization for a long enough time. So I've met them. We're not friends, but we've met each other. And because of my work in Ethiopia, I'm relatively, I'm a known quantity in the organization, because the organization at that point was out of money of trying to expand the Global Leadership Network. We're trying to expand it around the world. And I took on Ethiopia without much money. So we were pioneering a different kind of model on how to bring leadership training to Ethiopia. Anyway, so I'm kind of known to them. They kind of vaguely know who I am. I know several of the advocates at a much higher rate. And so I'm connected to them. So, but I don't do anything at this point. I'm just waiting for the people that are the independent investigation to bring forth their results, you know, kind of.
Right. Yeah. So I do want to, get to the idea of apologies, the necessity of it. I particularly would like to get some of Megan's thoughts on that. But before I do, I just want to ask, since you've been talking about how you've jumped in on this with Benjamin, how has that been received by the network of people that you work with? All of us, you are some kind of pariah that nobody wants to touch? Oh, don't get near Kyle.
Yeah, sort of. Right. Initially, early on, though, I'm having a relationship with Benjamin. I tell them that I'm doing that. He's busy. He's busy writing people, trying to get them to stop hosting the thing, and he's working on that, building his spreadsheet and email list, and he's emailing people. And I write a paper that I submit to the other people and said, look, it's called My Friend Benjamin. So this is my friend Benjamin. Like, you need to know who he is, and you need to not treat him as something other. You need to know who he is and know his backstory. And I encourage them to treat him with kindness and fairness and openness, right? Because I think that's the way. That's what we should do. Right. And so I go to a meeting in February where all the people that are hosting this event go in February. And that's where the report comes out from the independent study comes out.
Sorry, can I just interrupt you for a second, Kyle? Because I think about 6 or 8 times now you've used this word independent.
Sorry, that's what they called it.
It's a lie. So the word is a lie. It's pure falsehood. Okay. So, and in fact, there were 4 people on this, in this group. 0 of them had any previous experience investigating sexual abuse in a ministry setting, and all of them had long time connection to Bill Hybel. I mean, one of them literally the year before, he was the head of his denomination. And the year before his denomination's big annual winter meeting, he had Bill Hybel on the stage and spent minutes and minutes lauding and praising and honoring him in front of all these leaders from his denomination. So, and then this guy was appointed to investigate him. So it wasn't independent, just to be clear.
Benjamin's absolutely correct. I was referring it to by its name that they gave it.
It's lie of the name.
Group. Yeah. So, and independent is, It's not up to the standard that we would like Boz Trevikian. Is that the right way to say it? Trevijan. It's not a Boz kind of investigation that really is fundamentally independent. And they've been asked to do that kind of investigation and never chose to do that. But even this non-independent group came to the conclusion that the women were telling the truth and that Bill was not. Okay. So
what? And still.
Yeah. So even
they kind of cover it up.
Right. Even given that, they still come to that conclusion. So that document comes out. At this point, I'm not yet a pariah, right? Because I haven't done anything. I've just been waiting for them to do their work, right?
Right.
And at that meeting, we read it. I get the report, and then we have a big meeting where everybody's kind of asking questions. And I asked several nosy kind of questions in that organization. And it's pretty clear that they're not going to do what I think they should do, right? So, and I'm like, why are we not doing that? Why wouldn't you respond to this? and I don't get really good answers at that point. I'm pretty frustrated and kind of mad. And I come back to my organization. I come back to my church. And now our wagon is hooked to their wagon, right? I mean, we're repping for them in my town and in Ethiopia, right? And so I'm mad at them and I'm complaining because they're not apologizing. And then I get sick, actually. I get the flu. And I'm home and I'm mad. And I'm sitting there and I realize, oh, wait a minute. I need to apologize because I took their emails in 2018 that were full of half-truths and out-and-out lies that slandered the women who I knew. So I knew the women, right?
Right.
And I knew that the men advocates that had been speaking up for them. I knew those men too. So I betrayed those women and I betrayed those men. And I picked my friendship with Bill over my friendship with them in that moment. Right. I did this really horrible, unsupportable thing. And I passed along those rumors and I attacked those women in both my community and my church and in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm culpable for that. That's my responsibility. And whether this organization ever apologizes, they're owed an apology by me.
Right.
And so I started then to work on that. And for about a week, my staff and I met every day because my staff was all of the same opinion. And we wrote then an apology that we wanted to be a full-throated, complete apology for what we had done. And that might lead other people that were in the same position that we were in to apologize. And then we invited other people to join that apology. I presented it to Benjamin and I said, could you help me make it better? Right. Because I thought that none of us are really good at apologizing. We don't have much practice because it's not something people do. So we don't have much practice. So I thought I would get somebody outside to kind of help me. And I remember Benjamin saying to me, you know, he stayed up late one night proofreading it. Well, we all rented a house together in Austin and met together to hang out. That's where I met you, Phil, was that same weekend.
Yeah.
And we met in Austin.
We met at the restaurant there. Yeah.
So it was that weekend. So Benjamin is proofreading my document but he really wants to confront me about why I won't use the language of sexual abuse and sexual assault. Because we tend in Christianity to couch it in sinfulness and that language, right? And that was one of the things that Benjamin really helped me to get much better and much clearer, to use the language of that's much more specific, much more detailed language. So anyway, so we wrote the apology and then we put it out. And then I set about trying to figure out, could I reach these women and apologize to them directly? Like, would it be possible to do that? Benjamin knew several of them from his work. I knew several of the men from their work. And so I began the process of calling and contacting and asking if I could meet with them to apologize. And so then we set out on this journey to apologize to them.
Well. Okay, so I want to get Megan here in on this, some of your thoughts about the dynamics. And by the way, so a couple women have already commented about with thank yous for doing that on the Facebook page here. And I don't know if you remember Kat, who was with us at the lunch in Austin. Yeah. So she's on listening to us right now too. So Megan, so all this has been going on. What's going on in your head, and what's?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So I think that sexual assault and sexual abuse are very body things, and I'm loving the things that you're all saying, but it is a very kind of head, cerebral conversation. And As a woman myself who's a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, we're talking about something that's very, very much inhabits the whole body. So the shame and the blame and the horror and the normal thing for someone who experiences sexual abuse, as I know personally and from speaking to many other people in the work I do with homeless youth, is that all of the blame and all of the shame and all the guilt is just naturally on you. And especially, I mean, Bill Hybels' victims were adults, but there was a huge power difference. And in my case, I was a child and my grandfather was an adult with a huge power difference. So that complexifies things immensely. And so when I read this apology that Kyle and Benjamin had written to the women who'd been abused by Bill Hybels, I cried and cried because it somehow broke through being just a mind thing into being a body thing, where the shame and the blame weren't being heaped on the survivors. The shame and the blame were being accepted by people like Kyle who had passed things on and put on the person where they really belong, which is Bill Hybels, who had done these horrible things to these women, which however much healing, however much prayer, however close to Jesus you are in your process, and I know this personally, those wounds don't ever go away. They're there and you can get triggered and just suddenly, like post-traumatic stress disorder in its complex form, which happens as a result of this, means that you can just be living your day and then suddenly something will happen, you'll smell something or hear something or see something, and you'll be feeling like your body is about to be killed because it's a kind of a death. Part of the process of experiencing sexual abuse is that you feel like you're going to die, like your whole body feels like you're going to die. And that can come back for me in my life because I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. That's hard to say. That can happen suddenly. And it's so angering when there are people who, because they don't want to face this stuff themselves, will judge you as a survivor of sexual abuse in a way where they're saying something like, oh, just bring it to Jesus, come to me and I'll pray for you and I will heal you, as if it's somehow, I mean, the way I see it is that Jesus died on a cross in extreme pain and anguish, and he experienced all that shame and all that blame and all that awfulness. And we as humans with our complex stories will continue to experience those awful things. And we can come to Jesus on the cross in that pain and know that he's with us. And so anyone who stands externally and says, oh, you haven't sorted yourself out properly, why are you feeling these awful things, doesn't understand humanity, doesn't understand Jesus, doesn't understand the cross. And I wish all those people would stop writing books and stop talking, because they just confuse everyone and make Christianity into this stupid positive thinking balderdash.
Oh. That's boy, thank you. That's some really powerful stuff. It places these things into an image of being these scars that are so much different than like the scars of war. The scars of war tell a story, and somebody can go, wow, I got this, I got this in such and such a place, the fighter who fights, and he can say, I got this scar doing this. And there's a bit of, the scar comes with honor, right? But these are scars that every time you touch them, it's like it returns to the moment. Yeah. And yet, the story has to be touched. And there's also a kind of scar that occurs through a genuine confession. Because, at some level, we're not just talking about an apology. We're talking about a confession. And it has a very sacrificial component about it, where we've, in confession, we've been trying to hide something, right? And in trying to hide that thing, when we come out in confession, we're sacrificing a false honor we don't really have. We are creating for ourselves a moment of trauma that we need to experience when we confess. in order to be knocked off our pedestals. And the person who remains on their pedestal and allows everybody else who's experienced trauma through them not to be knocked off, and to personally acknowledge that they, to step off, as it were, to dive off the pedestal head first in confession, only maintains the depth of pain in others who have to relive it every time they see his face or hear his name, knowing that, it's been covered by lies. So, wow. The Facebook comments lit up while you were talking.
They did, yeah.
And so were likes and whatnot going on. Catherine Camisa, who's watching, is very much into body work and talks about this kind of thing a lot. So she was saying she's crying and saying, "Amen, thank you." So, thank you, Kat. So where does this go from here? So we have the outsider, Benjamin. Oh. I don't know if you can hear the noise in the background here. It sounds like the construction guy is going at it.
It's not too bad.
Okay.
Not too bad.
So we have the outsider to the whole project, Benjamin, who you grew up fundamentalist Baptist, but then somewhere along the line, along other things, along with stuff like this, you don't consider yourself a Christian at all now. And then Megan, who you're actually just in the next room from each other, right?
Yeah.
So for those of you who've come in a little late, Megan and Benjamin are married. I actually know Megan the longest of all of you. She came and visited me in Salem when you.
That was so good. I loved that visit.
Oh, that was a fantastic time.
We had such a good time.
Yeah. I always loved introducing people to my weird city.
Yeah, and all those fantastic witches. I loved them. They were so inspiring.
Right. Yeah, such good people.
Yeah.
So we've got the outsiders from a non-Christian and a Christian perspective, and the insider who's struggling with the dynamics of what's going on in this. I'm going to call it a corporation, because in the United States, a corporation is a person, and we protect that person above the people within the corporation that the corporation is supposed to help. That's the terrible thing about our laws in the United States. We've let corporations become people, and we allow them to protect that body of groupthink over the very goals of the corporation itself. And so we run over the people. And this is an ultimately perfect example of that kind of thing going on, right? But at that point, this has been going on for quite some time now. There's been a little bit of beating of the bush, and and then Bill's retired and he goes off and nobody hears from him. And is anything continue to go on with this at this point? Or is it just gentle reminders periodically? Hey guys, remember this? Let's not wait for 200 years to finally say, oh, there was something bad that happened back there.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's still, once we write the apology, I fly up to Chicago. So I live in Texas. I fly to Chicago to sit with the leaders. So I know the leaders, right? The new leader, his name is Tom DeVries. I love Tom. He's traveled with me on his first international trip to Ethiopia. We're friends. And I go to him and say, I think you should apologize. I think it should look like this. We're going to apologize. And we're going to invite all the other leaders to apologize. And so
now that's really dangerous, because what you just said to them as you sit down with them is, hey guys, I think you should apologize. I'm going to apologize. And what you say in that moment is, we're all wrong and I'm going to let everybody know. Now I'm going to say it from my perspective. I did this wrong, but hey, we're all wrong. You just put them all on the spot. I mean, did you have a room full of guys just like staring at you, not knowing what to say? What occurred?
So that there was only a few of us in the room. I brought one of my best friends with me, a guy from Chicago that is a minister in Texas, flew up there. I flew him up there with me, so that number one, I wanted to have a person in the room who was disconnected, who could listen and help me, right? Because I can't help anybody else but me, and who could give me feedback, and he's known me for a very, very long time and could speak into that. And so, I mean, again, I love this organization and I love these people. And so it's harder to discount me because of that, because I've served the organization and love the organization. And I think it was hard because they really want me to stop. They've asked me to stop. They want me to not, but I'm not willing to do that because I think it's because I'm only morally responsible ultimately with what I can do, right? And so what I can do is do the right thing. So even like you said, somebody said thank you or said something like, I mean, I'm embarrassed that people have to say thank you to somebody that's done the right thing, that has apologized for doing a terrible thing. It's really not an honorable thing. It should be the standard thing that people do when they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And the fact that people feel like they need to say thank you about it means that's how unusual it is for us to do the thing that should be done naturally and should be expected of people.
Right. So, and I guess this is bring this question out for everybody. So is that surprise at an appropriate apology, or I think the word really is confession. Apology, it just doesn't say quite as much as confession describes the depth of the sin and depravity of the moment. But is it a surprise to us? Is that part of our American culture, or American corporate culture, or American corporate Christian culture? Is it a man thing?
It's patriarchy. We live in a patriarchy where a woman's body has historically belonged to men. And even though there's so many laws and people speaking out about sexual abuse, the norm is for it to be a shameful thing. Shut that woman up. Let her stop talking about her body and this thing. And really and truly, the norm is for it to be something that's assumed to be a woman's fault, not the man's fault. And in this story, we see that Bill Hybels is probably on a yacht in the Caribbean having a lovely time, tanning in the sun, his body, while the women who are survivors, and they're very brave and courageous women. I have the privilege of knowing one of them. And wherever they're at in their story, it's them. When people talk about this story and other similar stories, it's the women. And I know for me, in some of the contexts in which I live, I'm still being blamed as this loud, mouthy, ridiculous person who keeps bringing this thing up that should have been forgotten years ago. So I think that a big part of this is patriarchy and gender issues.
Right.
And I think what Megan said right there is like, people just want to move on. Like they think that moving on is not talking about it, where I think moving on is dealing with it. Because if we didn't learn anything from South Africa, it was truth before reconciliation. There has to be an accounting. There has to be truth telling if we really anticipate the truth setting us free, right? And I come at this from that modality. It's like I really think that what Jesus was talking about is true, and that bearing that sin, as you were talking about, Phil, like confession is real. Confess your sins to one to another. It is not a mechanical thing. It's a relational thing about moving towards another person. And to move towards them, you have to get the barrier out of the way. And so, so what I told the organization I was going to do it, and then I went and did it. And so I met with the women that I could initially, and I said, Benjamin actually helped facilitate that. And I met with one of the women, and we met in downtown Dallas. My wife came along, and then I read her the apology, and it was devastating to her because she said it's the first time somebody had apologized, like really confessed and apologized in the whole process. People had played at the edges of it, but actually hadn't. And it shocked me that nobody else had. I just happened to be the one that I was taking what I think the Bible says you're supposed to do. If you've offended somebody, you're supposed to go try to fix it, right?
Right.
Doing exactly what it said I was supposed to do. It's just uncommon, and that's shameful on Christianity and Christians in general, that it is uncommon. It should be.
Right. And it's unfortunate. I mean, in doing what you did, on a personal level, the most you have to apologize for is passing on the false information that was generically given out to everybody, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, on a personal level.
Yep.
And so an apology, as it relates directly to the offenses, it places you in a position that's kind of like, you know, we talk about Jesus in this respect, in respect to the sin of humanity as, you know, Adam and Jesus. We talk about this federal head kind of thing. You know, Adam kind of represents, as it were, the sinfulness of humanity is, you know, in a sense, the federal head. And Jesus comes along and then does that same thing for us. And his death then directly relates to our sin. But Jesus...
Sorry, can I just interrupt you for a second?
The apology,
Phil?
If it's to come from the person who actually does it, would be so much deeper, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Benjamin.
Phil, I mean, touching on what you're just saying, you know, I was, it absolutely makes my head explode. I mean, these people, it really, Kyle's laughing at me.
we want to see, I want to see these. We want to see this online, you know.
Can I just say, I went to a church service on Sunday, Phil.
Yeah.
Here in Melbourne.
You did.
And the church service was being led by a man who has spent the last 40 years doing exactly what these leaders at Willow have been doing, and which is to say, absolutely refusing to acknowledge the harm that was caused and his contribution to that harm.
Right. I'm assuming by his father, right?
I'm not really going to say who it was.
Okay.
And this man stood up there and he did this communion thing, right? This ritual surely is in some sense at the very heart of Christianity.
Yeah.
He did this ritual and he handed out the blood and body of Christ, and that's what these Willow people do. They do communion, whatever. They're Christian, and it just makes my head explode. Here's this guy who, you know, whatever your theology of crucifixion of Jesus is, you know, I mean, he took responsibility for, and in a sense, to whatever extent it's possible, you know, in his own body, bore the shame and the torture of, and the CPTSD and whatever. God, Kyle's over there like, you're not a Christian, right? Like, but and then these people stand up and do this ceremony and like hand out this stuff, and but they're doing the exact opposite. It's astonishing to me. It's just, I mean, this is what Willow and Global Leadership Network continue to do, and yeah, I just
and that it's not like that's the only. This is the one, in a sense, the one we're picking on right now, right? But
it's
how many others are there? You know.
Yeah.
Well, it's extremely rare to see anything different. I mean, I asked Boz Javidian once, who's been doing this work for 40 years. I asked him, is there any instance of somebody getting it right? You know, and he named one organization.
One
in all those years. He said, well, these people, I think I want to say Tate's Creek Presbyterian, maybe. I might be getting that wrong. Okay. I can put it in the comments later, but so he I've read the thing from the church that he's talking about, you know. So I mean, you have these two instances.
Right. Well,
but
and
mostly the church is just interested in power and maintaining power. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what it is. And
sure.
So,
in a very different respect, I've been on the abused end of, denominational activity. Of course, it's a very different thing, but I became the front page example of the heretic to be booted out for my supposed crimes against any kind of orthodoxy, just by befriending the pagan. And can
I say, Phil, when you stood up in that Greater Salem Pagan Network meeting and you were talking about love, like you were saying all this stuff which was basically right from the Bible about Jesus and love, and every single pagan in which there was listening to you and loving you, and afterwards I was talking with them and they were saying, oh, this guy, he lives it, he really lives this stuff. So of all the people who should be being treated badly, you're the person who should be treated well because you're doing it right.
Well, that's what I thought, so I stuck to my guns, but I only got in more trouble because of it, right? And that's kind of the dynamic. I can't say I haven't seen people do it right. They wash it over, whether it's individual churches or a larger corporation of a denomination. They wash it over. So, yeah, that's stunning. Some guy does it for 40 years and he can mention one church.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's stunning.
We don't have good models. We don't have good models. We don't have good experience, and that's why that's why the few people that are on this pathway have got to keep banging the drum, because the only way we turn that ship is by finding the next person to do it right and the next person to do it right, and begin to change the culture of confronting evil with apology, truthfulness, confronting it in ourselves and trying to help people. I mean, like, I know I went to seminary and, I got a bunch of degrees. I didn't have a single class on apologizing. We never talked about it, right? I didn't have any class on structural, systemic, corporate responsibility, how to do that. I mean, there's just a bunch of stuff that the people in academia, they've never done themselves. They don't even know how to do it. They don't, so the few people that are doing have really got a big moral responsibility to keep doing it so that we can give other people models. We can teach people a better way. I've told Benjamin this a number of times. Benjamin cares about the church doing it right more than most people I've ever met, because he can look at it and say, you're so inconsistent. Your message is this, your behavior is this, and he sees it quicker than most people. He sniffs it out, and he's been kind to tell me directly when he thinks I'm doing it, and not been stingy about our friendship or relationship, but still confronting me with truth, right? And I'm like, that's just rare. Mostly people. We are done with each other too quickly when we don't measure up. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the world we live in right now in particular. Somebody will do it wrong, we'll write them off instead of trying to change them. And, I can say I'm better at it than I was beforehand, because I've had Benjamin who's unrelentingly truthful, but kind and fun, and we enjoy and I find it to be very refreshing, right? Because normally what you get in Christianity from people is a kind smile, but then they knife you in the back. We don't tell each other the truth in love very often, and so it's better. I find what Benjamin and I get to do is better than being talked about when I'm not in the room. I'd rather them tell me to my face that's
right. Yeah, it does seem.
I wrote him a note at one point. He said, that's gaslighting. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. So Benjamin's also.
Did I accuse you of gaslighting? God.
He kind of had to bring me up to speed. I apologize. I'm sorry. You're right. I live in a little town in the middle of nowhere, and I'm a pretty limited space, And so he's had to get me up to speed. And he's been patient with me, and I appreciate that an awful lot, because I've learned a lot and done that. And I should go back and say one more thing. I apologize to these women, and they've all become dear friends.
Oh.
This is the one thing that we really haven't talked about. Is like, apology doesn't make people move away from you. In fact, apologizing has made them move near to me. They've all become incredibly dear to me.
Wow.
I feel very fortunate that I've gotten to speak face to face to most of the women, and I've been on Zoom calls with all of the women that have been a part of that network of people, and I've been able to speak to them over time, and they've all become friends. And I think that's not what we normally hear. You know, apology is going to, it's going to be too hard. It's been the most beautiful thing for me, in our relationship, and I've developed really close relationships with them.
Yeah, it does seem that for such a critical thing, confession, apology is tied directly to the dynamics of salvation. For such a critical thing, it seems that the evangelical church does not have a robust theology of confession.
Right.
There are other traditions that have very robust theologies of confession and how it applies to the Christian walk. But in evangelicalism, it's kind of like our confession is we say sorry to Jesus and then we're saved. Right. And though we know there's more to it because we can, we're told about the Matthew 18 model of, take it to a person, then to a couple, and then, but we really don't have anything more dynamic than that we really talk about. It's just a glossed over event.
Since you brought up the Matthew 18 model, I have to make sure I bring up the Matthew 23 model, Phil.
Yeah.
All right.
Go.
Well, that's the one where you just publicly and without any carefulness at all just call out the bullshit from the religious leaders and call them all snakes and vipers and whited sepulchers.
I love
it. That's the Matthew 23 model. Yeah.
Well, and I think these kind of things, that particular model has its place in the right place. If there are public abuses, they should be publicly noted. Don't just walk up to that person who's some kind of leader and go, hey.
No, they do. They want it to be private.
Something they can be called public. I don't have a problem with that. Going 100%. To them personally also is important, I think, as well. Sure. But public things deserve public responses, and private things, private responses, and things.
100%.
All groups.
This guy. So this guy, Tom DeVries, who's currently the head of GLN.
Yeah.
He said to me, oh, I've talked to these women. Like he wants to be allowed off the hook by claiming that he's talked to these women privately and quasi apologized or whatever.
Right.
When he's been part of their very, very public, abuse, as it were.
Abuse and shaming.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And can I just say really quickly?
Yeah.
Because I've been wanting to say it for a little while. If anybody wants to read Kyle Henderson and First Baptist Church Athens' apology or sign it, they can see it at lovingtheworld.com/apology. lovingtheworld.com/apology. You can see it there and you can sign it there if you want to. So.
Yeah. And we'll mention that again as we close here, which it's about time to do. And so what I want to do is let each of you go with your thoughts about where does it go from here, or is there anything kind of left out that you want to say? Kyle, why don't you go first? I want to close with Megan because you've been like the star of the show. Everybody loves what you said, Megan.
We want to hear Megan because she's the best.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
The apology, a number of people have wanted us to take it down. I think our intention now is just kind of leave it there, right? It's 260 people have signed it. But of that 260 people, a number of them were people that were like me. They were host sites, and it was really designed for people like that. I think lots of people could sign it. It was really designed for people inside the organization to sign it. but somebody signed it 5 days ago, right? So it's just there, and people stumble on it at whenever and for whatever reason, and then write something and sign it.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Sometimes they get there because Benjamin sent it to them, and sometimes, right? But when some people are given a chance to do the right thing, some people do the right thing.
Right.
I would think that we could all help lead an apology revolution by helping people give handles and teachings and speaking up for apology. Like, it should happen more often. It should happen in our personal lives more often. It should happen definitely in our corporate lives, but it's got to stop being these manicured, face-saving kind of apologies that we've all, like, I hear it all the time now, and somebody say, I apologize to all those that were hurt, or if you were hurt. And I'm like, no, I hurt people. I'm positive this hurt you. And I apologize for the pain that I've caused you, for disbelieving you, for maligning you. I mean, we've got to stop distancing ourselves from the pain that is caused by behaviors that are wrong. We need to own that at a much higher rate and take more responsibility. That's the thing I would say that we've been learning about apologizing in my community. My church has been very supportive. Unlike Phil, your experience, my experience was I'm in a church in which I explained to them what we were doing, and they've been very, very supportive and very encouraging, and wanted us to get it right, and have been encouraging us to continue. And we've not given up. We just keep waiting for the next leverage point to keep reminding people and keep reminding the GLN that they could still do the right thing. There's no statute of limitations on doing the right thing. You should do it.
That's right.
You should do it immediately. But if you're not going to do it immediately, at least do it, right? Don't get hung up in that and do and I'd encourage them to do the right thing. I'd encourage all of us to do the right thing as quickly as we can.
Mm.
So my thought that I have, having listened to this and been part of this amazing conversation, firstly, I'm very thankful for Kyle and for Phil and for Benjamin for being people who are courageous enough to see and say things that they notice. So thank you, guys. And secondly, I'm thinking for you people who are listening, this will be bringing up things in your own story, be it your own personal story of sexual abuse, or maybe you're an abuser and you're someone who has sexually harmed people or is sexually harming people. And I really want to say to everyone that you're a valuable, worthwhile, amazing person, and that it really is worth reaching out for help, both professionally and personally. So sometimes it's really scary to take the next step, whatever that is. But if that step for you is reaching out for professional help or personal help, whether you're an abuser or a survivor or someone else, I mean, all of our stories are complicated and no one gets to go through life free of pain. So maybe it's a totally different kind of abuse, but I'm just suggesting that you take some time for yourself, be it right away or next time you have a moment, to just sit and be with your body and notice your body and where you're feeling things in your body, and to reach out for help. And if you don't know where to do that, connect with Phil or Kyle or Benjamin or me. There's a great thing in America. I used to do talks in schools and prisons in the Snohomish County area and talk about something called, I think it was stopitnow.org, and it had resources for people who were sexually abusing and people who were survivors. It could direct, and it had, you could talk to them without them having to report you, so that you could get some help if you were doing criminal things and wanted to stop. Because I think it's really important when we talk about this. I think one of the problems with the whole area of sexual abuse is that we demonize pedophiles and sexual abusers so much that we don't realize that we live among them and they're everywhere, and that's pretty normal actually, because of the cycle of abuse whereby someone experiences something and then does it to someone else when they're older and stuff like that. So I think to just embrace yourself in your body, whatever you're feeling, whatever this conversation has brought up, and to be willing to go somewhere for help, because you matter and you're valuable and your story matters and you're amazing.
You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was great. Any last thoughts, Ben?
I'm really hesitant to speak after Megan's spoken.
You should be.
Yeah. I guess just a couple things. I mean, so at the link I gave before, Phil, there's also a sermon there from Kyle. And it's a really, in my opinion, a really very well done sermon, specifically talking about how, like, what a proper apology looks like. So listen at that. And
excellent.
The other thing that's probably helped me more than anything else has been the writings, both on social media and in his book of Dr. Wade Mullen. So he's on Twitter, and he did his doctoral dissertation in the area of like how Christian organizations respond to allegations of abuse, and he's been studying that now for years, and he's outlined in his book. He has a book called oh, you're gonna have to help me out here now. Something's not right. Something's not right.
I have a copy. I'll show you.
Yeah, Megan will grab a copy.
It's a really good book.
It's an amazing book. He's outlined really, really clearly all the things that people do wrong instead of apologizing, and then he's also outlined how to get it right. And he's really gentle about it, and he's really, really clear about it. He's the most clear writer on the whole subject I've ever seen. So, and he also has a bunch of stuff on Twitter. So,
okay,
yeah.
Excellent. Pull it back just a little bit, and what's the writer's name again?
Wade Mullins. Mullins. It's a really good book.
Awesome. I
just felt like he was talking about my life.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. So in terms of people, Megan, you mentioned if people wanted to connect with us. So how do they connect with you guys?
With us?
Yeah.
Just via Facebook Messenger, I suppose.
Okay.
Will that work?
So they might have to be friends with you.
Megan, if you're going to do it that way, I'm going to have to show you how to check your message requests box on Facebook.
Okay. So, if you're not my friend, just send me a message and Benjamin will show me how to check my message requests box on, because I'm not very high tech.
Okay. And Benjamin, how would you like them to connect with you?
So they can write to TR DeVries. No, sorry, no. at gln.org. No. Don't do that.
You're naughty.
Kyle did not know I was going to say that, and he should not be held responsible for that at all. So. No, I mean, look, it's first name.lastname@gmail.com. So Benjamin.Ady. ADY is the spelling of my last name.
Yep.
At gmail.com. You can email me.
And if people want to email me, they can too. I'm meganady@gmail.com. So MEGANADY.
No period between?
No
period
dot,
between first. Okay. So
I'm not
Megan Ady or Benjamin.Ady at gmail.com. And how about you, Kyle?
I'm Rev Kyle, REVKYLE, Rev Kyle at lovingtheworld.com.
Okay, cool. And this has been the Wild Theology Podcast, and these have been my crazy friends from Australia and from Athens, Texas. And we've been talking about the whole Bill Hybels Willow Creek Church scandal and what did not happen with it and what should have happened with in terms of apologies. And, boy, this has been one of the better podcasts. You guys have been great. Free-flowing thoughts and some really heavy stuff. Megan, thank you so much for being a part of that. So I'm going to click out of Facebook right now. So thanks for everybody who's been watching.